you know, normally we do these at our sales U, and what we want to do is bring you the opportunity to listen to us in person, and you can see the interaction that Bill Bigliotte and our Diana are going to have today. But we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about why total financial is really a difference maker in underwriting today, and it's going to be a really open dialogue. Um, what I want to let you know is there's a few housekeeping items. If you want to see all of us on the screen, if you go up in the upper right-hand corner, there's four boxes in a circle called Grid View. If you hit that, that'll open it up and you can see all of us on the screen. The second piece is we really encourage you to ask some questions. Now, all your lines are muted, but there are two ways that you can ask questions. You can go to the chat box and send myself or Diana or Bill a direct question, or do it right in the Q&A. Our goal is to get to as many of these as we can during the presentation, but we're also going to leave time at the end of the presentation for this, because I think, and Diana will echo this comment, is this is your session, and really we're going to talk about what we do differently, but it matters to you because these are your cases and how we treat them, and if you've got questions, we absolutely want to get to them. So with that, let's get started. Diana, Miss Diana, we added Bill to an already crazy strong underwriting team, I don't know, about a year ago or so. Tell us why you added Bill and about your relationship and why he fits the Total Financial family so well.
Thank you, Scott, and good morning to everybody. There's a lot of people on here today that I have not met, so let me introduce myself formally. I am Diana Greenberg, President and CEO of Total Financial. I was born and raised in the business from the beginning of when I was born. I've been in the business, so I've got a lot of experience, but just wanted to make sure that for the people that haven't met me before, that you know all about me when we go into this. I am very lucky that I have had an underwriter on staff, a chief underwriter, which means it's been a chief underwriter from an insurance company for over 15 years. Bill is the third underwriter that I've had in that time, and the best one I've had at that time. And this is the first time that we're actually giving you the opportunity to meet our chief underwriter and really hear and see what goes on behind the scenes. Bill brought to Total Financial many, many years of experience, having been with two very major insurance companies that you all work with, that he was a chief underwriter for. I was lucky enough to work with him very closely for 15 years. And I felt that he was a very open-minded underwriter and a holistic, out-of-the-box underwriter, which means not necessarily underwriting by the manual, but let's talk about the person, not just look at the conditions and look at the whole story. And most important, you know, a lot of GAs have underwriters on staff, so you might think that this is no different, but we think that Bill does a lot of things differently than some of the other GAs do. He is able to get on the phone and talk the talk, which means he can actually get on the phone with an underwriter and they speak the same language, which is quite important. And in addition, he also is able to work on the brokerage side and speak to us, the case managers, our brokers, and anybody else. So it was a win-win situation for us, but I really, really needed Bill's experience and expertise and respect in the business.
I can tell you a little bit about me. Some of you may know this, but many years ago, I began my career in the insurance industry as an agent. Can you believe it? I started as an agent. I spent 3 years, and I have to tell you, I was an extremely unsuccessful agent, perhaps like textbook unsuccessful. But what I did find out in spending those first 3 years was just how hard an agent's job is. I mean, I failed at it. I was not that good. I couldn't wait to get out of it. But I liked insurance, so I went into the home office in Boston, where I'm from, and they decided they would put me in an underwriting class. So here was an agent who was going to try to become an underwriter. it was kind of a novelty item in the home office because they had that, there's the agent who thinks he's going to be an underwriter. That's pretty funny. But what I found out when I got there was that the understanding of home office underwriters as to what agents did not exist. We had agents over here and underwriters over here, and they worked together, but they really didn't understand each other. So while they were training me as an underwriter, I was enlightening them on some of the ways that they could actually help an agent's job be a little bit easier, or ways that they could hurt them and make the job tougher. So I think as I went through my career and I had a fair amount of success, I always look back and think that the first 3 years I spent as an agent were as critical to my success because it gave me perspective that most home office underwriters did not have. I might even say all home office underwriters did not have because they never left the home office. And me starting there just gave me a perspective that helped me. And I think, again, this is way back before there was such a thing as marketing underwriters. I'm not even sure there are marketing underwriters today, but if they are some. I was the first one way back when. I had a bent for the field, and I said, well, I'm in business here in the home office to generate business just like you are. So what can I do for my company to generate that business, but also get my job done as an underwriter? And that stuck with me for almost 100 years that I've been in underwriting. It's been very helpful.
We're going to touch more on that too later on.
Oh, absolutely. The 100 years, is that the combined of you and Marty together?
Well, it's mostly me. Marty adds a little bit, but I've been doing this for a long time. And again, I think that's another one of the things. I've been doing it for a long time, but also at a very high level. I was the VP and senior VP of underwriting at two fairly large companies, running not just the underwriting departments, but in my career also was responsible for the claim department and for the customer service department. And that, those gave me some unique experiences, again, that most underwriters don't have. Can you imagine the chief underwriter being in charge of the claim department? I used to see my mistakes. And you want an education, look at a case after you know that the individual has died, and you can gain a perspective from that, again, that most underwriters don't ever have. So I think, again, being more well-rounded in more than just underwriting has helped me tremendously.
Yeah, I bet it has. Hey, Bill, I've got a question.
Okay.
So you retired, what, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
2.5. Yeah.
How did the lovely Diana take and pluck you from that beautiful retirement land that you were in? What was the trigger there?
That's a really good question. I mean, I love retirement. I'm down here in Pensacola, Florida. I have a boat, golf courses and beaches, and I was, having a good time. My wife, Robin, is down here with me, but she's still working. So I was enjoying the heck out of it, but I also missed the action. I worked my whole life, so I kind of missed being part of the action that's going on. And so I thought about, getting a part-time consulting type things, and I had several opportunities to do that. But none of them seemed like the right fit for me at the time. They just weren't right, so I passed on them. And missing the being part of the action, I have to tell you, when I was at my last company, I had about 350 folks that reported to me, so I was kind of a big deal. Well, here I am in my home, and there are three of us. There's Robin, my wife, and there's Eddie the poodle. And just to show you how far I've fallen, I report to Eddie. Eddie reports to Robin. So I'm about as low on the totem pole as you can get. And so, I always have the idea that I might want to get back in, but the right opportunity had not come along until Diana and I hooked up. And of course, I'd known them and her for many years, and I always admired and respected the business they wrote, the way they did it, of all the agencies. Some are better than others. Lots of them are really good, but Total Financial was one that really jumped out at me as, maybe this is the opportunity. So we talked, Diana and I, about what I might bring to the table and what she might need. And we sort of launched this experiment that I would calling it an experiment because I went to work learning how to help them and how they could help me get back into it. And we made a few tweaks, adjustments as we got going, but it's been a great relationship. It gives me just what I need to get back into the action. I think I give them some, they have a terrific, as Scott mentioned, underwriting resources, in addition to Diana, who's one of the best. If you've not worked with Kimberly or Tricia or Liliana, then you're missing it. These are advocates. These are underwriting folks in the total financial level, and they are terrific. They're as good as there is. If you want an advocate working on your case, these are the folks to send your cases to and have them work them through. So we kind of worked through some tweaks, and I'm now in the position where I can help them with some of the bigger, more complicated cases. I think the ladies that I mentioned a minute ago all get together, and they can handle most of the cases, but every once in a while they run into the big case or the older folks with medical problems or financial problems or issues, challenges that we face. And I think that's when they kind of get together and say, hey, let's see what the old guy thinks. And then they send that case out to me, and we figure out, what we want to do is get that case issued at the best possible rate possible. And so we strategize with Diana and others as to, okay, this case has some challenges. The easy ones, they just go through, but this case has some challenges. How can we best position it, get the information that we need? I know what home office underwriters need for any case, having done it for 42 years. And so we package that case, and even though it has challenges, we look for reasons why we can overcome those challenges and present it to them in as attractive a package as possible, so we can get the best offer back from them. So it's been great, and I think I add a little bit to the equation. And while I still, while I may be the total financial chief underwriter, I still report to the poodle.
Well, that's a really good segue about the poodle, but more importantly, I think you said a couple of things about how you work with our already amazing team, and I want to kind of flip it over to Diana. Bill brings that really depth to our team that's already deep, but how do we leverage? How do our agents and our team go about leveraging Bill's talents? What's the process with that, Diana?
Okay, guys.
Excuse me.
So here's the guts, and this is what you're not going to get from other people because they don't share their secret weapons. First of all, let me just say the stars lined up in time for me to be able to get Bill at a time where he was looking to come back. I just had to say it was just totally by chance that we lined up together at the same time. Bill's different than everyone else. He mentioned marketing. What we do normally is when we get your cases, we are the case managers that you work with, review the information. They all, as he said, are very experienced. They have a depth of knowledge, and we try and catch all the information up front. And sometimes there's a condition or there's something that might be a red flag that we're concerned about. And at that point, they will either come to me or they will on their own say, I think I need to run this by Bill. Now, Bill talked about tweaking this in the very beginning. Our past chief underwriter that was on staff used to actually read all of the medical records, which you can imagine on some of your cases, which are thousands of pages long with APSs, takes a lot of time, hours, matter of fact, all day to read APSs. And Bill very quickly told me, that's not why I came out of retirement. I do not want to be able to spend all my time doing that. So not only did I hire Bill, but I hired another company that does risk evaluation and does summaries, which thank you, Bill, for recommending that company, because it's the company that most of our insurance companies use to internally review the APSs that are being sent over to the insurance companies, summarize them for their underwriters to review. So we give Bill the summary, so he has the complete summary of the person's records, their impairments, their visits, and then he makes a suggestion of what he thinks that we will get from an insurance company. Now, Obviously, Bill has worked with insurance companies. He's worked with two of the biggest insurance companies that we work with today. And you put in my experience of working with over 30 companies for 40 years. And between the two of us, we can figure out who to go to and how to present the case. So there's two sides of that. He can review the case up front when, especially if you guys are sending in informals. He will review the information. We'll get an idea of what it looks like, and we'll talk about it and submit the case, or he can work reactively. And that means if we get an offer on a case after we've sent it in and you've all applied for super preferred, which you do all the time, and we get a preferred or standard or even a rating on your case, we can go to Bill and say, hey, this is what we got. This is what that underwriter said. Do you agree? And 9 times out of 10, he says, no, I don't, pretty much. And I said, okay, so we have two choices. Either, we can give the information to our case manager that will load them up and give them the information to go back to the underwriter and fight the case themselves. Or if it's something that's a little bit more complicated and that Bill is completely more versed in and really can have that one-on-one underwriter conversation, he has spent a lot of time getting on the phone and talking to the underwriters directly. And boy, has he learned an experience of what it's like to be on the other side. Which
I'm going to address that later.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
So he works both from a reactive standpoint, where he'll fight the battle and talk to the carriers, but he'll also help, like he said, prepare the cases ahead of time with us. And we have a couple of examples of that we want to talk about and share. Recently, I had a case that was brought to my attention by one of our case managers, and one of the clients had a history of hyperthyroidism. For those of you, I don't want to talk over your head, don't know about that, person with a thyroid problem, abnormal numbers, usually not a problem for underwriting, especially if it's controlled with medication, and most people are controlled with medication. It's usually not a rule out of a classification. And this insurance company decided to decline the case because this person had this condition. I immediately got the decline and went, this is wrong. That's typically what I do. And I said to my case manager, okay, I want you to show this to Bill because I totally disagree with this. This person's got a history of this for over 20 years and has been, in my opinion, stable for 20 years, and this should not be a decline. And Bill, of course, got on the phone and had a conversation. But I'm going to let Bill talk about what he did with that underwriter to get that decision overturned.
Well, not to bore you with too many details, but hyperthyroidism can be significant. Most of them are not, but this can be significant. And the sticking point on this case, the thyroid produces a hormone, total TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, and carriers will use that level to determine whether they think it's hyper, mild, severe. And this woman, I had an attention-getting TSH. It was very low. It was as low as I've ever seen. The carrier jumped on that and said, well, that's uncontrolled hypothyroidism, and we're just going to decline her. And I talked to the underwriter and I talked to the medical director, and I could not get them to look beyond that. This is what we try to do. Yeah, we see the diagnosis, but what is behind it? Because not all hyperthyroids are the same, and not all diabetics are the same. So we look behind it, and when I looked behind it, I saw that, yes, this was very low TSH, but she's been followed for a number of years. She's been tested for Graves' disease and other things that hyperthyroid causes. There was a reason why the reading was so low. She's had a long history of benign thyroid nodules, which are depressing the ability to produce that hormone. But with the history and the well-controlled, she's well followed. She sees doctors all the time. I picked up the phone and I called the chief underwriter, who I happen to know, surprisingly. And I had that discussion with him, and it took about a half hour for that decline to be issued standard plus. That's 16 tables down to standard. That's a pretty good, and it was all because what we do at Total is we say, yeah, okay, I see that she's hyperthyroid, but there's more to the story than that. And there's more to the story than that low reading, because there are reasons why it is low, and she's had it for a long time. So anyway, the bottom line is, we will fight for your case. And if I look at a case, when I look at a case and it goes into the home office, I pretty much know what it should come back as, because that's what I did. So when it comes back at what I think it should be, we're fine. But when it comes back and I'm not agreeing with their decision, I'll pick up the phone and get on and not just tell them they're wrong, but tell them why I think they're wrong and tell them why I think we could do better. And it's a more compelling argument. If you want to have an advocate fighting for your cases with the home office, maybe fighting is the wrong word, but if you want to have an advocate who's lobbying for your case to get a better deal, I do it better than you do. Not because I'm smarter or anything, but it's just what I do. I can talk home office, and if you need an advocate for your case, me and the ladies at Total are the ones you want fighting for you, because we're really good at it. And this
I do have to say,
plus was amazing. I think the agent was happy on that one, Diana.
Matter of fact, she sent a little private note.
Yeah, I think she's on this call right now.
Yeah, she's on the call. She sent a private note and said thank you. So you're welcome.
Oh,
hey, Diana, there is a question from the field that I want to kind of insert because I think it's important. So when it comes to medical records, can we do something before? Can we order them before the case is submitted? And do we have a premium requirement for that? I think that goes pretty well to what we're talking about.
Oh, yes, 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 and yes, yes, all day, yes. Okay, so that's pretty much what we're known for. We like to call that an informal. So for those of you who have not worked with us before, if you have a client who you suspect has any kind of condition, you're not really sure where to classify them and what to quote them, and you want us to take a look at the medical records and assess it, and even maybe send it out to a few carriers to get some offers before you actually collect an application, yes, we can order medical records. Let's take that a step further. Given the COVID situation right now, it's even gotten better, because now we don't necessarily have to wait 3 to 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks to get those records, because now we are able to have electronic EHR, and we are able to sometimes turn around those records within 2 to 3 days. So all you need to do is get a HIPAA signed and give us the doctor information and the conditions. We order the records, send it out, and no, Total Financial does not have a premium requirement. I have done this for as low as $100,000 case, and I have done this for a $100 million case. So you just need to pick up the phone, have a conversation with your case manager who's been, assigned to you, and say, how do you suggest we should proceed on this? So I want to segue into a second example from the first one that we did, because there's two sides, like I said, to this. That was the reactive side of having Bill, help us turn that case around, which was huge, from a table 6 to a standard plus. Then there's the other side, which I kind of like to say is the prep side / marketing side / how are we going to present a case. So not sure if the agent who has this case is on this call either, but we'll find out very quickly. So this agent previously had underwritten a case before, 2 years ago, exactly, and had received a standard offer on the case. And this was not a small case. This is a rather large case. And this person had a history of, we'll use the DVT, deep vein thrombosis. And it had gone back for 4 years. It was diagnosed in 2016. So between 2016 and 2018, he'd had a few of these episodes, and he managed to get a standard policy from that time. He was well followed by the doctor, and he was on some meds. And now she's coming back to me for some additional insurance. And the issue that came up, which was a red flag, was, bad news is he hasn't been back to the doctor. And I said, well, that's going to present a little bit of a problem because a lot of our insurance companies, the minute they see this and they see that this guy has not gone back to the doctor and had this followed up, it's going to be a no-go, and they're going to insist on a follow-up. So what can we do to prepare this case and set this case up with a cover letter, which is really what the insurance companies need when you send these cases in, to set this up and say, this is the situation, and this is why I need standard again. So Bill, why don't you talk a little bit about what we had to look at in order to present that case?
Well, he had his last episode of deep venous thrombosis, DVT, in 2016, but clearly back then it was noted that it was a result of a long plane ride, and he didn't have his compression stockings on, which perhaps he should have. In fact, I would suggest everybody wear them on long plane rides. So he went to the doc and they treated him, and he got on some medication. And it resolved, and he was fine. He had no more episodes. He was back there in 2018. The doc took him off the medication and sort of released him, said you're fine. We don't think there are any more issues. And so to me, that, as a home officer, I always look at that as a positive. The fact that he has not been back to the doctor in 2 years is going to be a negative to the carriers, because they're going to say, well, what's going on today? I'm going to turn that around and say, if you have an episode of DVT, you will go to the doctor, or you will go to the hospital, or you will die. One of the above. And since he's been back for 2 years, they say, well, what's going on? Well, what I'm going to say is that nothing. He hasn't had to go back to the doctor. There's been no need to go back to the doctor because he's had no issues. If he did, we'd know about them. And he's only, I think he's like 52, 51, 52 years old, so he's fairly young and healthy. And our response to the carriers is going to turn it around and try to use that in our favor to get them to issue the case on a standard basis, which is what he should be now. We've not presented that yet. We're waiting for a little bit of additional information to come in, which we now have. So I imagine the next day or two, we will take this case to the carriers and say, here's why we think he's okay. And again, it's just another example of us getting behind the details. Yes, he has DVT. Okay, that's a good starting point. But what's gone on since then, and what positive factors can we find to make this case look as attractive as possible? And I think we'll be successful with this one, although we have not done that yet because we're waiting for information. So interesting one, and we'll let you know how it turns out, but I think we'll be successful.
To be continued, but I'm sure she'll be very happy.
Yes.
I think so.
Two great examples. Diana, talk about case size a little bit.
Talk about case size. Well, like I said before, we actually do all case sizes. So we don't have a minimum face amount. We don't have a minimum premium. We treat every case the same. It doesn't matter if you're sending me $100 million case, except for the fact that you probably want it done like in a week. But there are people that want their $100,000 case done in a week and quickly. So we really do try and get you the best offer on your case. And it really doesn't matter what the size of it is. And we see it all. And it doesn't matter if it's term or perm. You're just going to get the best treatment because that's how I was trained, and that's how everybody else is trained. One thing you should know is, you may apply for one company and you've already sold it to your client for that one company. But when we look at the records and we see it, or we note that there's going to be a problem between Bill and I and all the case managers here at Total Financial, we really have a pretty good idea of which carriers handle which impairments better than most. So it might even be a case where I get it up front and I say, hey, this really isn't going to work with this carrier. They're not really good with this condition. You might want to consider another carrier. You might want to let us, send it out informally to the other carrier at the same time. But the point is, you're going to get direction from us, and you're going to get advice, and you're going to get detail on all of your cases, no matter what the size.
So are you talking about your little exception sheet that you keep?
Oh, my exception sheet. We don't talk about that. Okay, so
Keep it in our head so we don't have to tell anyone.
yeah, no, I have
We
an
have it.
exception sheet that goes back now 6 years of every single exception that has been obtained. And it's not exception. Look, all it is a reconsideration. Bill, if you want me to re-show you yours, I can. But we keep that because for me, that's data. I'm all about data. If you know me, I like collecting data. I use data to, talk to underwriters all day long with it. So this tells me what insurance companies are doing as far as their offers, or if they're not making their best offer up front and I have to come back and get a better offer on the back end, if this is happening frequently or not frequently. And I can also look at it by condition and say, oh, this carrier is actually pretty good at this condition versus this other carrier at this condition. But in the end, they're all logged so that I can actually present that to a carrier and say, hey, I got 15 cases with you this year that you had to reconsider. And you might want to take a look at this and for your own knowledge to see what went on with your cases, with your underwriters, et cetera.
So, Dan, we had a couple of questions on human HPI and COVID. Do you want to jump on those now, or do you want to wait to the end?
Let's wait till the end. Let's finish, and I'd be
Okay.
happy to deal with that.
Okay, yeah, we'll hit those at the end. So, Bill, I've got a little bit of a question for you. So, you talked a little bit about your unique experience in claims, seeing both sides of the story, and I'm sure as a chief underwriter, you didn't like to see the claims come through. But you also have a different perspective on financial underwriting as well. How does that help, our team and our agents out?
Well, financial underwriting is, there's always been an interesting topic, and I'm going to go so far as to say not a well understood topic by most underwriters. We get trained a lot on medical issues and lifestyle issues and those kinds of things. But the financial cases, they kind of leave those for the older, more experienced underwriters. And all we're taught, you guys will probably remember this as something called the times rule. Most underwriters will go by the times rule, which is you're 40 years old, you make $100,000 a year, you're 20 times, so you can have $2 million. And if you want to go beyond that, it's kind of excessive. It's financially not justified. I threw out the times rule many years ago and have instilled in my underwriters a different rule, which is the does it make sense rule. Forget the times rule, because people are different. They're much like they're different medically, they're different financially. The guy making 100,000 and another guy making 100,000, they could be totally different. And you got to get again, you got to get behind the numbers and say, okay, the agent wants $5 million on this guy, which seems excessive. Let me find out how we came up with that and what can I do to try to justify it. Because again, my preference has always been to issue the case if possible, whether I was in the home office or even now, issue the case, because that's why we're in business. So I'll go back to if there's some unanswered questions and try to get behind the numbers. Okay, income is one thing, but what about trusts and business and unearned income and
Bonuses and stock.
real estate and stock and all these other things that impact you perhaps a little bit differently than they impact another guy. So don't get hung up on what the face amount is. Get hung up on the way they came up with that face amount and try to make it make sense. Again, that's my make it make sense rule. And if you do, I'm sold, because now it makes sense. It's covering the risk that you've identified. And in my career, I've talked to brokers and agents, of course, but I've talked to attorneys and accountants and bankers and real estate people. Again, heck, I've even talked to spouses, and those are kind of interesting conversations I've had. But to try to get behind the numbers, because I want to issue this case. You want 5 million, 10 million, whatever it is, I want to give you that. But I also have to be able to justify what I do. I know how to get behind the numbers and go looking for the things to justify the amount that we're applying for, and I'll take that to the carriers now. And again, I know what they need because I was in that seat. I knew what I needed. I know what they need, and so there's a lot of gray area in finances, and you got to be able to know how to put the pieces together, looking at the whole picture. And everybody's picture is different. And don't try to lump everyone into the same times rule, the same. And that's what I've done, and that's what I'll continue to do. And we get some face amounts that on the surface look like they're excessive, but when you get behind the facts, they actually make sense.
I'm going to add to that it's not beyond me to Google the hell out of a person or
Yeah.
a company.
Yeah.
There are situations, just to expound on what Bill just said. You can come to us and bring to us a case where it's somebody who has a startup business, and the startup business is worth nothing, right? There's no money in the company. And then most of the insurance people are going to look at it and go, well, why should I give them any money? There's no money in this. But if I look at the person who started the business, and that person has a track record of starting up other businesses, and I can show what his track record is of starting up the other businesses, and where the money came from, et cetera, and so forth, that starts telling a whole story.
Yep.
And that's what Bill and I, that's what he's used to doing. That's what I'm used to doing. And that's telling the whole story, not just looking at, oh, you filed your taxes and it says 0, because there's more than that.
Yeah, we underwrite the guy starting the business as well, and say, what's his potential? Yeah, it might not be justified today, but what's the potential we're dealing with on this particular guy with his track record, if it's impressive? And that goes a long ways towards us bumping the amounts up to something that, again, I'll say makes sense. So
I also want to say, because I can watch, God, these questions that are coming in are actually really great, and I hope I can do a lot of them. Bill mentioned all the people that he can speak to. So let me reiterate something to you guys. This is one of the very, very important reasons Bill and I partnered together. Bill not only talks to underwriters, he will talk to, as he said, medical directors. He will also call a doctor for me. So for all those times that we have something that is maybe not clear or misstated in a medical record, and you have an underwriter that comes back and says, well, it says this, and then your client goes, well, that's not true. I shouldn't be in there. And we need to either get that retracted by the doctor or clarified by the doctor. Sometimes it's just easier for me to have Bill get on the phone actually with that doctor and have a candid conversation, because he is an underwriter, has been an underwriter. He knows what questions to ask, so that he can actually present that information to the underwriter without necessarily having to wait a couple weeks to get the doctor to put that in writing. He'll also, which has happened recently, get on the phone, talk to an agent. If the agent wants to be really clear about more details about the case, I've had him get on the phone with the agent and the client, he and I, so that the client was absolutely clear and understood what was going on and what we needed to get the case done. He'll talk to lawyers. So that opened up a whole different world. It's not just about having him read records and having him fight your battles. He's here to also have conversations, which is one of the more important reasons why we wanted to have this meeting and discussion today, to let you know what he can do.
Yeah, I'm not shy. I'll talk to anybody about anything, and again, all in an effort to get your case presented in the best possible light to the home office.
Now, Diana, you have a third case study, but we also have a number of really, really good questions. So
hit the questions.
All right, so let's start with the first question we had. Was human API, is only a summary, and then there's a follow up to that one. Talk to me about human API and about that.
Okay, so human API, which is fairly new to the industry, and everybody has jumped on the human API boat, or electronic health records data. Every company is doing it. There are various different vendors that actually do it. HPI, human API, is one of them. Not every doctor is signed up for it, and it also requires the client to specifically have to release and agree to release their information. The human API information typically does not give us chart notes and does not give us the whole picture from the client's records. I don't know if any of you have downloaded your own records or see them on your UCLA or any of your hospital records, but they have your lab tests, but they don't necessarily have your doctor's chart notes, and they probably do have a summary of your visit. If you have a case that has a pretty detailed or cardiac condition or cancer or something that's more involved and more in depth, where we're going to need to see chart notes and see what the doctor's opinions are, HPI is not going to be the way to go, because the carrier is going to come back to me and say, we want full records. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because we can literally find out if there's a human API hit within like 48 hours and then get the records really fast. So even though we might spend 3 or 4 days getting those human API records, getting them to the underwriter, or having them come to me and Bill and look at it and saying, there's not enough here, we've already saved time, because we already know more than we did before, but we are going to have to go back. There are other vendors like Claretto. They do provide more information than human API for the carriers, but unfortunately, they are not approved with every state yet and every doctor. So the amount of participating doctors is limited. They are growing exponentially. This is all, if you guys realize what's happened with COVID, you'll understand that every doctor, not necessarily all of these just insurance companies, but now every doctor has had to get on board with these programs. So some of these doctors might not have even had electronic records prior to this year. So they have to now catch up and start getting this information in there and start lining up on it. So there are going to be times that we will have to go back and get other records. And there are other vendors that they do other things like lab capture, where they can just get your labs for like the last 5 or 7 years. And that might be enough to get a case through on an underwriting standpoint. So the answer is yes, it might not be enough. And yes, I might still have to go back and get 5 years of records.
But it does give you information to start the case.
Yes. And I would always try it first.
Yes. Well, we always like to try something, give it a wing first. Now, the good follow-up question, I think this is a fantastic question too. With COVID, Crew and AG are wanting to see full records. How does that tie in with the API and what's going on in the world right now?
I'd love to know the person that asked me that. Actually, it's not just Crew, and it's not just those two companies. It really depends upon the case. And Bill's shaking his head.
Yeah.
Each case is different, and it's not mandatory. Some companies, like I said, were more advanced. They had already been down this road. If you heard my webinar with Susan Galili at John Hancock, you know that John Hancock was already on board with getting these digital records, way before COVID happened. And some of these companies have now been forced into it. So some carriers are a little bit more aggressive than others, but pretty much it's case by case. It's not absolutely mandatory that you have to get 5 years. I don't know of any company that's telling me right now, oh, it's mandatory, you have to get 5 years, unless you're dealing with large face amounts. And if you're dealing with very large face amounts, more than likely, those carriers are going to want the full records, because it's not just going to be enough to just look at the labs and the diagnostic tests. They're going to want the full physical and see everything that the doctors noted.
Okay. So
a case by case thing, because they're all different.
another question we have is on genetic testing.
That's all you, Bill.
The full question is, it's becoming common for people to have genetic testing to see if they have defective genes that might be subject to bad conditions, like future breast cancer and so forth. I don't know, Bill, what do you see there, and what do you see coming in the future on genetic testing for underwriting?
Well, that's a really good question. When I retired, that question had not been answered yet. People are going for genetic testing. Can we use a genetic test? And I think there was sentiment on both directions that you can't ask people to take genetic tests, and you can't even ask whether they have had them. Now, if somebody volunteered the information, that was a little bit different. I don't think that much has changed in the past couple of years, in that people are going for genetic testing. They're finding out things that that we'd like to know, and sometimes we get to know it, and maybe we could use it. There are other times where even if you know about it, you can't use it in your underwriting because of the way that you obtain the information. So to whoever asked that question, I don't think I'm giving you a good answer, but I don't think there is one yet. At least it wasn't when I left. Now, there may have some things on the 2 years that I totally retired and forgot about everything I knew about underwriting. There may have been some advances in that that I was unaware of, but I don't think we've come very far in that issue with that issue.
Let's talk about that breast cancer, like, because that's a really good one.
Yeah.
Look, genetic testing is new, and as Bill has said, it is not across the board by the insurance companies that they are using genetic testing. They are looking into using genetic testing, but again, just like Bill said, it's not something that we request. It's not something that they're going to ask for. But for sure, if I've got somebody who has a family history of breast cancer, and they come in with genetic testing for the breast cancer test, and it's negative, and maybe they had a lump that was removed and it was non-cancerous, will they look at it? Will they consider it? Yes, they will. But it's not really something right now that is really being demanded, or I would say being required at this point, and being used heavily in positive or negative in your underwriting experience.
Yeah.
If there's another underwriter on this call, and there are a few you feel you want to feel free, hit that one.
Yeah, there actually are a number of our peers on here. Diana, there's a really interesting question. I'd like to hear both your takes on this one. I'm going to answer this one to the agent on foreign nationals. Call into your SVP to talk about which carrier is the right carrier for your foreign national. But where I think this is a great question right now on foreign national business, and our carriers are accepting it, and what's happening in that marketplace, because I still think it's a viable marketplace.
Bill, you take it.
Yeah, I think that it is as well. And again, what are the details behind it? Who is the individual? Where is he from? Where might he be going? The COVID-19 thing has changed the outlook of many carriers, most carriers, all carriers on foreign travel, both in and out of this country. So I think if you could make a case, make it make sense, make a case for the need for the coverage, and the fact that even being a foreign national, there are not risks here that we should be worried about, unduly worried about. I think you could sell it. I think there are some carriers that are more open to foreign nationals than others. And Diana, you may know, I see you nodding your head. Yes, there are. That they just have folks that know more about it, and they feel more comfortable about it with it than some of the other carriers are. So I'll let Diana respond to who we might want to send the foreign national cases to. But I think we can get them done with the right information.
Okay, so everybody, you all know that COVID has presented some issues with this.
Yes.
It's more of a concern right now, depending upon the countries that you're talking about, and the carriers are definitely looking at, the amount of instances of COVID and what's happening in those countries per se. So if you live in the United States right now, you should not apply for insurance anywhere else, because we're not looking too good. But on a separate note, there are carriers, Symetra for sure, just had a meeting with them yesterday. They are open for business. They want to continue to do their foreign national business. Lincoln Financial, open for business, looking for foreign national business, and more. Each carrier has had in place, and it still remains in place, their rules for their nexus rules about what you need to tie into the U.S., because the sale has to be done in the U.S. And right now they will be looking at, if you do answer, because there's that question as far as, have you traveled outside of the U.S.? Look, if you are outside the U.S. and you went to a country and that country was very heavy in COVID, it's very possible that you're going to have to be quarantined and or postponed for a short period of time before they'll consider you. But if you're here and you're a non-resident and it's the same story and you're healthy, yes, we definitely have companies that are absolutely back in the foreign national business as long as it's not one of their C-rated countries, bad country that they normally wouldn't be allowing business from, or even a low B country. There's different rules and regulations. So just give us a call and we can walk through it.
Okay, we have time for two final questions, so I'm going to lay this one up to you two, and I want to hear this, and then Diana, you got one last question for Bill, I know. Does Total Financial get exceptions for older folks that maybe some other competitors may or may not get? A good example, so like AG, they don't like to ride diabetics over age 70. What are we doing differently than other BGAs to get those older folks the best offer? I mean, we've talked a lot about it, but do we ever get those?
You sure you don't want to read that really nice comment from the underwriter at AG that just wrote you that?
I know. It's a beautiful
there
comment,
was just the underwriter from AG online, and he had a great statement about this presentation.
Yes, he did. Fantastic, by the way.
I don't get to see those for some reason.
I'll send this one to you. Here you go, Bill. You go and answer that question.
Every carrier, well, not every, but most of the carriers, like I said, they have their niches. I wouldn't necessarily say AG is a company that, in my opinion, I don't think I'd ever say, oh, I'm not bringing a 70-year-old with diabetes to AG. I don't think that would ever come out of my mouth. It really depends upon what the situation is. I don't know. Is he a type 1? Is he a type 2? How long has he had it? When was he diagnosed? What, am I talking too fast? What are the medications he's on? If I can show that the person's controlled and they're 70, and depending upon when they were diagnosed, if he was diagnosed when he was 60 or 50, why wouldn't AG take that case? Now, COVID is another issue. People and some of the carriers were holding back with people that had underlying conditions, diabetes being one of them, but that's one of the things that has now reopened. So again, if you give me an uncontrolled diabetic, more than likely that carrier is not going to want to look at that right now, and maybe AG would not be favorable with it, but I don't know that they'd necessarily at all say a decline unless that person was not well controlled and because you're applying and it's COVID. I think you should read that comment from the underwriter.
Who, Bill?
Or
me?
You.
I would agree with you on that, by the way, Diana. Again, it all comes down to the facts behind the case. All diabetics are different. How is he doing? I think COVID-19 affects them more with some companies than others, but you still underwrite the guy for the impairment that he has and how he's handling it. So I agree.
Well, if our AG underwriter was on this call, and I think we do have a couple of others, but summarize, this is a great presentation, Diana. Your company ranks above the tops in brokerage agencies. I recommend producers send their cases to you so they can show you how hard you work. You have a unique talent of being able to know which carriers to place certain risks. Bill and I go way back. As you know, I'm always happy to speak with him or any of the staff to help you with the case at AG. So that's just a nice compliment from one of our partners. And one of the things that I've always told people, and Diana will say this too, is the carriers are our friends and they're our partners. And we work very closely with each and every one of them to make sure that we're giving them the right cases and working with them. So I appreciate that comment. I'm sure Diana does too. I know we're getting to the top of the hour, but Diana, you had one last really good question for Bill. Why don't you lay that one on him?
Okay, Bill. So we talked about all the things that, you're offering us and what you're doing right now, and I've taken you out of retirement. So how do you feel about being on the other side? I would like to say, being with the force, but how does it feel to be on the brokerage side? How does it feel to be on the brokerage side and not in the home office?
On the dark side is what we used to refer to it as, the dark side. That's a really good question, and I hope I don't offend the underwriters, home office underwriters. that are on the call. I've learned a lot being on this side of it. I've always seen this side, but being part of it is a little bit different. And the first thing that jumps out at me is how stubborn and unreasonable home office underwriters can be.
Wow.
No wonder you guys don't like us. No, I'm just kidding. Well, sort of. But when they get past that, I think home office underwriting and field under, there's not a lot of difference. At least there was not a lot of difference for me. So you say, well, how is this different? When I was in the home office, I always felt like anything I could do to contribute to my company getting more business, good business issued, is a plus for me and is a plus for my company. So when I looked at cases in the home office, I looked at them very similarly to the way I look at them now, which is to try to find the positives, try to find a reason to issue this case at an attractive rate rather than decline it, because anybody can decline a case. But try to find a way to get it issued at the best possible rate for my company. Now, I do the same thing on this side of the fence. I've got the same goal, which is to try to get this case issued as best as it can be by pointing out the positives to the home office underwriters, and getting them to agree that this is a good case. So I don't know that there's much difference. I'm now the presenter of cases instead of the person that the case was being presented to. So my perspective is a little bit different, but my goal is the same. It has been the same on both sides, because I want to get business issued. It's good for the agent. It's good for total financial, and if it's the right business, it's also good for the company. So that's still what I try to do. I'll tell you what I do miss is I was always the final say on a case. So I would discuss it with my underwriters, and if I disagreed with what they came up with, I would try to tell them why I thought we could do this, and we'd have a discussion. And there was sometimes when underwriters defending themselves were pretty adamant that they were right. And there were an occasion or two where I came along and said, "Look, you're going to issue it standard because I said so, and I'm your boss," and we could get that done. I didn't do that often. I tried that early on in my new role. And it was quickly pointed out to me that, no, I don't have to do it because you say so. And by the way, you're not my boss. So I learned a little bit, and maybe I don't handle them quite that way anymore. But when I contrast the two roles, there's not a whole lot of difference. We're trying to get business issued as best we can for whoever is writing it, for the benefit of the agent, the brokerage, and the home office, and the client. And so it's different, but in many ways, it's very similar.
Yeah, but now you know how much we do on the front end in order to get that to you, which
Absolutely.
I'm not sure you knew
I didn't
before.
No, I didn't know quite as much as I do now about the way you guys put the cases together, the way others put the cases together. I didn't know very well Kimberly and Liliana and Tricia. I did not know them well. I know them well now, and these guys are terrific. I mean, they are absolutely terrific. They could be in any home office in the country and be stars there, because they know how to handle a case, they know how to present it to the home office, they know how to follow up, they know how to ask the right questions. And I've learned a lot I probably learned more from them than they've learned from me, because they do work hard at getting cases issued. They are advocates for the folks that write the business, and they do a great job. But I hope I contribute a little bit in my role. But again, looking at it from both sides, my goal is the same, and always has been.
Yeah, we appreciate that. I think having you with us gives us and our agents just an edge, Bill, because I think your experience just takes it to another level. You combine that with Diana and Kimberly and her team, and it does make it very much a team effort. And whether that case is $500 or 5 million, I think we understand, and we do try to take it to a different level. I know, Diana, did you want to say something? I know we're at the end of the hour. Do you want to say something quick?
I just wanted to reiterate, Bill, you do actually 100%, bring something to this team. These girls have had years of training, starting back with my mother and father when they created the business in 1971, coming to me. Now we've come full circle to them. And most of them have, like I said, been here between 15 and almost 25 years. So long experience. But, you know, your way of looking at things and the way you speak and teach and educate and talk through is really important. So thank you for what you do for us. Thank you for everything you will be doing for us. And thank you for taking the time to actually be on camera and letting our agents see you so they know, you know, what we're doing with you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the comments, and I also want to thank the attendees for putting up with me for almost an hour, which is like world class.
I think it was pretty good.
Yeah, to sum it up, you know, we're here. We want to get your cases issued because we win. When we win, you win, and we can have a relationship with the home offices around the country so that they win. It's a pretty good combination, and leverage it with us if you can. I suggest that you do. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Diana. Thank you, Bill. I will say there's a number of people on the phone that are current agents. You folks know the process. Call your case manager, call your SVP. There's also some new folks that are on the phone. I'll give you our phone number. It's 310-477-7500. You can call in and talk to myself. You can call in and talk to Diana. You know, bring us a case and really give us a try, because I think you'll find that we do things a little bit differently. We'll handle your case a little bit better, and we'll get it done for you. And you know what? And we're going to be honest too. I've seen Diana many times look at a case and go, that's not going to work. Or she's going to look at a case and go, I need to have these 4 things, and let's see what we can do with it. So I think we will do it differently. So what we would just ask is, you know, give us a swing on the next one and see if we can do it differently. So with that, I want to say thank you to everyone and enjoy your Wednesday. And again, our phone number is 310-477-7500. And thanks, everyone. Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Diana.
Thank you, everyone. Hope to hear from you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. Have a great day.